Welcome to Learning Through Technology, a K-12 edtech podcast proudly presented by STS Education. I'm Alex Inman, founder of Educational Collaborators.
And I'm Bob Cerruti, founder of the edtech group. We're here to bring educators together, helping them unlock the full potential of learning through technology.
Tune in every other week as we connect with education leaders and dive deep into topics that matter to you, delivering actionable ideas straight to your school. Welcome to the show.
Alex, today we're talking about AI again. And again is like the landscape changes. But I think this year, this school year that's just underway for us, this is the year that everything changes. This is the year that AI is something teachers might think about or worry about a little bit. But I think by the end of the school year, school is going to be different. And with that in mind, we have Lindy joining us today. And I've been there with you. Alex and I, as everybody knows, go to conferences together. And you might guess I walk around with my head down and I just try to get to where I can get to my computer and do some work. And Alex is the mayor. He's waving and kissing babies and shaking hands, and he knows everybody. And he really does know everybody. It's remarkable how regarded you are considering the whole package.
Big difference between knowing everyone and being well regarded.
You are well regarded, grudgingly accepts Bob. So anyway, that's kind of how you came about knowing Lindy, right?
Yeah, actually, this is one where I didn't go and meet her. She just crashed our party one night. So it was great. We were at an ISTE conference and had a big old table with a bunch of our collaborators. And we were chatting, and one of our collaborators had seen Lindy's session earlier in the day, and Lindy was walking by the table. And the person just kind of gave that sort of, hey, great session today. And that was all Lindy needed. And she decided, oh, thank you. And she just grabbed a chair and sat down at our table and decided, I'm here now. And it was a ton of fun. We had so much fun laughing, learning, sharing with one another. And Lindy has been one of those people who's been so invested in changes that have happened in the edtech community and the edtech world that she's become a very rapid expert on almost every new thing that has come out. And so she's an author. She wrote an incredible book on hybrid learning during the pandemic. And then when AI really came out sort of in full force, she was already there. And at the recent ASU GSV AIR conference, she gave 3 or 4 sessions on AI on a conference that was focused on AI. And so she's really an impressive leader in this space. So, and it's always great to have another collaborator on the show. So we have Lindy Hockenbary joining us today. What do you say we get into the interview?
I can't wait to meet her, somebody that you like more than yourself.
I didn't say that. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Learning Through Technology, a K-12 EdTech podcast. We've got a great show today. We've got a colleague of mine that I've worked with through Educational Collaborators for a long time, Lindy Hockenbary. Lindy is a former teacher, an author, a designer of EdTech champion programs, and for today, an AI expert. So, Lindy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Lindy, introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I've spent my career in education, never worked anywhere else. I started as a classroom teacher. I taught 7 through 12, so middle school, high school. My classroom was a computer lab. I taught business education, which in the US can be very businessy, can be very techy, can be a mix. I was very on the techy side mostly. And so my classroom was a computer lab. This was in the mid to late 2000s. And so the idea of a one-to-one environment, I had never even heard that. I know, Alex, you were doing that at your school, ahead of the game, but I'd never even heard that term. But I always had it. So every one of my students had a computer. And we're talking old school desktop computers with the big towers and the deep monitors. Took up like my entire little tiny classroom in rural Montana. So long story short, got me working in edtech. So I currently do consulting work. I'm a K-12 edtech advisor, I think is the best explanation.
So tell us a bit, that early 2000s, that correlates with my entry into edtech, although I suspect I was a little older when I entered than you, but not as old as Alex. So tell us a bit about what you saw in technology nearly 2 decades ago that gave you some idea of the potential in education.
Yeah, great question. I don't know if I've ever answered that question before. I really like it. I'm like the elder millennial. You could even like right on the edge of Zennial generation. And so when I was in high school, it was right when like MSN Messenger, dial-up internet. We actually had a computer lab in my school, my very, very tiny rural Montana school. We had a computer lab, which was like, hey, at the time, this was amazing. I remember we would spend our time in the computer lab hiding MSN Messenger from our teachers. That was the thing at the time. And I took a Microsoft Office class in high school where we learned about, we went through Word and Excel and even Access at the time and PowerPoint. And it came really natural to me. And then when I ended up in college, I was always kind of the tech person that everybody went to randomly in the education school. It's like, you have a tech question, go to Lindy. So I had already at the cusp of my career experienced the effect of technology. And I knew my students were going to be even more and more and more immersed into it. So I did things like the one business class I had one accounting class. Everything else was tech related of some type. And so I looked at this group of kids, rural Montana, most of them were going to be ranchers and farmers. And I was like, put the textbooks away. I used my Perkins money to buy QuickBooks at the time. There was no such thing as QuickBooks Online. This was before the web-based stuff. I bought QuickBooks and we spent the majority of the semester having them learn QuickBooks because I was like, I know that's going to be so much more relevant. Like none of you are going to become CPAs. I just knew, like I knew their personalities, like you're not going to become CPAs, but I'm like, you to know how to keep your ranch books. Let's learn QuickBooks. And then I would try to bring things in at the time. This was really even before like Web 2.0 tools. I'm sure there were some out there. I didn't know they existed. I would do things like, oh, hey, let's have fun and let's go into Microsoft Publisher. I'm like, does that even exist anymore? And we create like posters and things because I knew that they needed to learn that.
That relevance of making sure that they understand sort of have that literacy that they need for their lives, right?
Exactly.
I think that is sometimes missed in technology, but it's necessary, not just in technology. I think one of the biggest problems and frustrations that a lot of students have, and you hear this all the time in math, is when will I ever use this? And what you've done is you've identified some real relevant uses for them so that they're really becoming literate in those technologies in ways that are meaningful and relevant to them. So a lot of our audience is interested in AI and the changes that are happening in the world in education and AI and their personal lives relative to that. And I know one of your particular passions within the area of AI is AI literacy. So first off, tell us, how would you define AI literacy? What does that mean to you? And why is that so important?
Great question. So to start off, definition of AI literacy. It's having the knowledge and the skills to understand the technology, to be able to use the technology, and be able to evaluate the technology. And those three pieces go really hand in hand. And I should say I'm stealing this from Digital Promise, by the way. I didn't come up with this. This is from the Digital Promise AI literacy framework. If you haven't looked at it, it's a great start. I always tell people, I'm like, it's a great start. It's going to change as the technology changes and mesh, but it's a really good start to help you think about AI literacy. And they have this really good graphic that show those three pieces: understand, use, evaluate. And to me, that's answering the second part of your question of why AI literacy is important, that this technology is already infiltrating every part of our lives, more than most people know. So we have to understand it.
When you say more than people know, give me an example. What do you mean?
I would say more than the average person knows. Like whenever I'm teaching teachers about AI, I always say like, who has used AI? And depending upon the audience, I might have anywhere from 25 to 75% of the room raise their hands. Then I start giving examples. Well, who has I can't say the word Alexa, because I got one right here, in your house? Who uses Siri? Who watches Netflix? Who has a credit card that gives you fraud alerts? Who uses email and you have email that goes into spam automatically for you? Those are all examples of AI. And they're like, oh, really? I didn't know that. I would say the elder millennial thing. I'm like, who in here is my elder millennials and older? And, raising their hands. And I say, guess what? You were one of the first uses of AI in a consumer product. And they're like, what? And I'm like, spell check in Microsoft Word. That's AI. Now it's changed a lot and grown since the early 90s-ish, but that's an example of AI. So what I mean by it's already infiltrating our lives more than people know, it has been for a long time, but we don't call it AI because once a technology becomes a seamless part of our lives, it's no longer AI. It's just part of our lives. It's just another technology that we use in our day-to-day life.
What about early boom or late kind of young boomers like Bob? You know.
All right. So I'll circumvent Alex there. And late boomer. He can't count, ladies and gentlemen. He's a communications major. Obviously, his math is failing him. But I'm glad he came in here because do you think that we're doing a disservice to older users like Alex by calling everything AI and it scares them? Because I'm a Gen X person and I was one of those people who, when spell check came to Word, was like, this is great. And of course, that's what it is, right? It's a computer guessing with a big database and code. It's guessing what I'm trying to spell and it's offering suggestions. Well, eventually based on context and whatever. Are we doing a disservice by calling all of this stuff AI that people are we doing a disservice by using AI and stuff that is not so technical? Are we scaring people away?
Yeah, great question. Like, is it increasing the fear by using that term all the time? So you said it right. It's guessing. All AI is guessing. But the types of technologies that I was talking about, like fraud alerts and spell check and email spam filters, those are all very predictive based AI that have been around for decades. So now we don't think of them as AI. November of 2022 was when ChatGPT was released to the public for free. So anybody could go sign up for a ChatGPT account, November of 2022, and use generative AI. That's, I think, where the fear really started to increase because now we're moving from a predictive based AI to an AI that creates or generates new content. I think it's still appropriate to call that type of technology AI because it is so much different than predictive based AIs like spam filters. And I think along the lines of AI literacy and getting back to why it's important to teach that, we now have AI that sounds human, acts human. So I think it's important to still call it AI so that we can really reinforce things like understanding that even though it talks and sounds human, it's not human. It's biased just like humans are, but in its own way because it's built by humans. So I think it's still okay to call it AI. And even though that brings fear and it brings the Terminator picture into people's brains, it opens the conversation to talk about that AI literacy piece of, okay, people, we have to understand it. In order to understand it, you have to use it. We also have to evaluate it, and you can't evaluate it if you don't understand and use it.
You talked about teachers that you work with. Let's change the angle a little more to students. How do you help students understand AI and build their AI literacy? And kind of going back to my earlier question, how do you make it really relevant to them?
It's honestly no different. Well, developmentally, if you look at a kindergartner versus a senior, the conversations are going to be different and how you approach that. But if I'm looking at teaching older students, especially, I'm not going to approach that any different really than I would teach teachers. Other than the teachers, we're going to talk about the effects of curriculum and instruction angle versus students. I'm going to approach it more of the effects on their careers and their lives. And when they enter the workforce and when they start having families of their own, what they can maybe should think about expecting of how this technology is going to change society.
So how is it going to change society and how do students need to prepare?
Great question. It's a deep philosophical question. I mean, nobody knows exactly how it's going to change society. I would say maybe the people that are really deep in creating AI have a true idea of where it's going to go and what the capabilities are and what the timeline of that is, but nobody knows exactly the effects of it. We can guess. We can make educated guesses based upon where the tech is now, how fast it's moving. And my opinion is it's going to have deep, deep, deep effects on society, humans, the world, because we now have the first technology. So I'm backing up for a second. Technologies that we have interacted with in the past and a lot the present are very rules based. So the computers that we use, humans are coding behind the scenes and telling those computers exactly what to do. And if there's an error, then you have a glitch in the software. And the computer can't fix itself. It's rules-based. It does exactly what the human says. AI, we're moving to more machine learning and intent-based, where it learns from itself. It makes inferences, it makes predictions. Bob said it perfectly. It makes guesses. So if there's an error, it's going to use all of its training data to try to fix itself. It's not just going to generate an error or a glitch like we have with rules-based. That to me is the core of why this is such a pivotal moment and change in technology, because we're now interacting with a very different type of technology than we're used to as humans.
Hey there, it's Sophia, executive producer for the show. You know those moments when the episode ends and you're thinking, man, I wish we could talk more about this. Well, guess what? We can. We got this amazing community over on LinkedIn. It's where we share all the good stuff, sneak peeks, cool resources, and quick activities to try out in your school. So here's what I want you to do. Grab your phone, head to LinkedIn, and search for our Learning Through Technology podcast page. Hit that follow button, and boom, you're in. Can't wait to see you there.
I'm going to do a little Alex here and frame my question a bit. Usually I just ask a question because nobody cares what I have to say, but I'm going to frame my question a bit here. So hopefully, little indulgence. I'm one of those people who works with lots of superintendents and in building and school leaders. And there are some that are very afraid of AI and they want to know about checking. How do we check that kids are using AI? And I'm one of those who think that in the future, there are going to be haves and have-nots. You either use AI and you're successful economically, happiness in life to do the things that you want to do, or you're not, and you're going to be left behind. And I think if we're not teaching that to students now, we're handicapping them. So with that, where can teachers start? What essential tools or what knowledge should they have in order to start this AI journey with their students or for themselves even? Because just because you're a teacher doesn't make you an expert. Hopefully it means you're an expert at connecting with students and leading their education journey.
So first of all, I 100% agree with you. And going back to the why do you have to teach AI literacy? So equity is a huge conversation. It has always been a huge conversation with technology access. When we talk about access to technology and education, AI is going to accelerate that equity gap. So as teachers, if you're not embracing teaching, you're putting your students at the back of the line, just like you said, Bob. So just kind of addressing that a little bit, the why. So going back to the what do you do as a teacher? To me, it's back to those 3 bars. Use, understand, evaluate. So you can't just pull the wool over your eyes and act like it doesn't exist. You have to teach your students responsible use. There's a huge conversation, debate, whatever you want to call it, in education right now about cell phones. Lots of schools across the board are banning cell phones. They're putting them in little pockets and you have to put them in the pocket at the beginning of the day and back to the end of the day type of thing because of the distractions, etc. To me, and it's the same, I'm just using that as an analogy for AI. By doing that, you're acting like it doesn't exist and you're not teaching them the responsible use, how to have healthy relationships with technology. And if we think that cell phones are distracting and causing a problem, imagine when your students' smartphones have their own little AI companion on them that knows everything about them. And that student, instead of listening to the teacher that's maybe talking above their understanding level, can go to their AI and say, hey, explain this concept to me in a way that I understand or based upon something that I'm interested in. Imagine the effects that that's going to have on engagement in a classroom. And again, some people are going to argue that that's just another reason that we just need to ban it and not do it. But taking and siloing schools and education in their own little bubbles and acting like the world outside doesn't exist is, in my opinion, not the right way to go in education at all, because then we're not preparing students for the real world. Note about that. I also, another analogy to give you, I told you I taught in the mid to late 2000s. This was right when social media was really becoming a thing. Facebook had just opened up to not just college kids. It was open up to anybody, right? I think Twitter came out like 2009-ish. And I was told as a teacher, especially a younger teacher, that just ignore it. Act like it doesn't exist. Don't friend your students on Facebook. Just act like it's not there. It doesn't exist. And I look back on that now and I'm like, that's the worst thing that we could have done. And we're now experiencing the effects, and research is backing up those effects. That because we acted like it didn't exist, we didn't teach those kids who are now have their own kids how to use social media responsibly. What's a digital footprint? What should you post and what should you not post on social media? So I've been telling people, if we do that now, it took about 10 years, I think, is what the research shows to see the effects of ignoring social media in formal education. That's going to really shrink with AI because the technology is moving so much faster. So I think if we take the approach in education to ignore, like we did with social media, we're going to be having the same conversations that we are about social media today in more like 2 years.
As I think about that framework, use, understand, evaluate, and how that impacts what you could do in the classroom, I think about an episode that we did with Gary Steger a few weeks ago. And he was talking about, even back in the very beginning, this is before internet. This is just using computers in schools. That when we moved to one-to-one, we did it wrong, because what we really did is create a generation of people who were consumers of technology rather than active users of technology. The relationship, you talked about sort of the relationship between the technology and the people. The relationship that we should have, according to Gary, is one where we make the technology do stuff for us rather than we do the stuff that the technology sort of brings to us. And so I think about that with, first off, sort of historically, one-to-one rolled out at the time of the internet, really. There were a very small number of schools in the US who were doing one-to-one pre-internet, or at least pre-networks where you could access that internet easily. We were one of those. Actually, when our one-to-one started, you actually had to plug in to get access to the internet. So this is pre-wireless. So I see that in what you're describing, where teachers should be working with students to tell the AI to do something for them rather than sort of the predictive text, the Netflix, the tools where AI is sort of crafting to you. You use it as a tool to have it craft for you. I just kind of making that connection between our previous guest in your comments.
The consume versus create paradigm. I've been talking about that with teachers in the instructional tech field for years. We can't just have students be consumers of technology. You have to have them create too.
So here's a controversy that I hear and see a lot of that I think relates to this. And it's teachers using AI to basically build curriculum for them. If we just ask the AI to build curriculum for us, are our teachers being the kinds of dangerous consumers rather than architects of the AI? Are they being the architects of the curriculum and using AI to be their tool?
Good question. I think the key word there, words, human oversight. That's the key. And that's, I think, one of the most important things for teachers to teach their students is that AI isn't always right. It doesn't always get it. It still needs that human oversight, that human element, that human touch added to it. So as a teacher, if you can have AI generate a lesson plan for you and make sure it's UDL compliant, it meets the needs of your students, it's aligned to your standards, etc., great. But you can't just spit it out and be like, oh, that's great. I'm going to send that on to my principal for my lesson plans next week. You have to review it and make sure that it's correct. So I think it's a happy balance with AI, especially the way the tech is now. And I think it should always remain this way, that use it to, I would say, have it do the labor for you, do the doing, but you're still doing the thinking. Get that lesson plan on paper, but then you can go back through and make sure, yes, this is appropriate. This meets my standards. The objectives are correct. The assessments are aligning with the objectives, etc. as a teacher.
So this brings me back to teachers, students. And one of the fears that teachers have with AI is that students won't learn. They'll throw in a couple of prompts, spit out an essay, and we know ChatGPT and the others like that can do a reasonable job, especially in simpler subject areas. I'm going to share a little story about school here as we record this has just started a couple weeks ago in Ohio. And my stepdaughter came home. She's a junior. And she told me about one of her first lessons was her teacher assigned her to use an AI, and I don't remember if it was ChatGPT or something else, to create an essay. And then her homework wasn't to turn in the essay, but it was to identify 5 things that were wrong in the essay about this topic. And I don't know. I asked her, I said, so do you think it means like punctuation or spelling or actual content art? And she said, I don't know. I'll tell you after I do the essay. And I thought, oh my God, she's going to learn more in critiquing the essay by ChatGPT, we'll say, than she would learn writing it. So I saw that as I was just totally impressed with that teacher. And I wish I had the name so I could shout that teacher out for having such a good idea. But in this era of it being a real tool that students are going to use, whether you're going to teach it or not, how should educators rethink their assessments and what they expect from their students?
Great question. So, first of all, I just had this conversation with somebody this week that as educators, we tend to pull the wool over our eyes a lot. And whenever a new technology comes out, we just keep plugging along in the classroom, and our standards don't change that much. We have to align to standardized testing and AP testing and all of these things that don't really change that much. So we just keep kind of plugging along and assume that that tech isn't going to change our curriculum and our instruction. But we can't do that. We can't do that, even though the standards maybe aren't changing, or they might not change for a few more years because we're slow. We can't lie about that. Education's slow to move. Every time a new technology comes out, every educator should be looking at that technology and going, how is this going to affect my students' lives? And then moving backwards from there, how do I need to change my instruction and my curriculum to match that? And I think AI is the most drastic technology change that we've seen, because now traditional assessments, writing essays, multiple choice questions, short answers, etc., can be completed by a technology with very high accuracy rates. It can write an essay pretty dang good. I mean, yes, you still need that human oversight and add that human touch, but it's really good at it. So we as educators need to step back and go, So again, this idea of taking out the labor part of it. So maybe instead of having students write essays all the time, there's still a place for writing essays and learning how to write, but maybe we need to back off that a bit. And instead, we need to add in other types of assessments. I'm a big advocate of voice reflections. It's a great way to ensure clarity and integrity of students learning, because if they're rifting their speech versus reading off of something that they generated from ChatGPT or Claude or another, right? You can tell when someone is just rifting, talking like I am right now versus if I would be reading off of a script. So it's a really, really great way to just get into your students' brains and truly know if they understood the learning outcome that you were working towards. So that's one way I talk to teachers about changing assessments.
And that'll work until I create the AI avatar of myself. And then I can record my voice recording and have the AI actually answer it for me in my voice.
That's a really good point. I actually do a whole session on assessing in the age of AI. And what we do is we look at, what does the AI currently do well? What does it currently not do well? And currently it's starting to sound very human.
You actually introduced me to Pi.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Pi.
Like a voice AI that just has conversations with you.
Yeah. So yes, it's sounding more and more human. We're getting to a point where we can replicate human voices. So yes, the tech is there. But when you look at what does it not do well, again, it doesn't do the informal well. It takes a script and it reads it. So eventually, and this is the exact conversation we have in this training that I do, will AI, like you said, will I be able to train my voice and make the AI sound like me doing a voice reflection? Maybe. And at that point, maybe again, we're going to have to rethink assessment and instruction and curriculum. That's where we live as a society, as technology constantly changes and shifts. But currently, it doesn't do that. So that's a good way to think about it. Another kind of, I feel like, tech-proof way to think about changing assessment is moving from product focused to process focused. And Bob, the example that you gave with your stepdaughter's teacher is a perfect example of that. So instead of writing the essay, let's have AI generate an essay. One major use of AI that's being underutilized in education is using it to generate exemplars, and good and bad exemplars. And by the way, that's another way to teach students how to evaluate AI and understand that it's not always right. It's not always great. It's not always going to just spit out the best example of something. Is have AI generate an essay and have your students evaluate it. One of the best examples I've heard from educators in talking to students about integrity and plagiarism and not just having AI write your essays for you type of thing is they took the class and they split them into 3 groups. One group wrote the essay with no AI use and same topic. The second group used AI to help them. So the AI helped them generate an outline. It helped them finesse the writing or add some engaging elements or however, right? They collaborated with the AI. And then the third group used AI to just write the essay. And then they had the class read each of the 3 examples and they didn't know which one was which, other than the one that their group did, of course. And they rated them. And every single time, the one that came out on the top was the middle group, the one that collaborated with AI. But what that example did is it put the learning back to the students and challenged them to go, oh, wow, maybe it isn't right that I just have ChatGPT spit out my essay and I hand it into my teacher. Instead, why don't, again, add that human element, that human oversight, and work with it to make the best essay possible.
That's great. I love that example. That example came from somebody that you worked with. Is this something that you did, you said, or something that...
This is something that another educator did in their school.
That's really great.
I'd like to go on record is my dystopian future doesn't have Alex creating an avatar of himself to talk to himself. He creates an avatar of me to tell him how great he is. That is my fear.
I am working on that this afternoon.
You didn't even think of that on your own, did you? And don't worry, it doesn't have to be informal because he'll write the script of all the things that I should say about how great Alex is. Oh, Alex, you're so tall. Oh, Alex, you're so smart.
All right, listeners, look for those in the video shorts on our YouTube channel coming soon.
Well, if you could make me more handsome when you do that. It's not a miracle worker, Bob. We can't make you more handsome, but we can make you think Alex is awesome.
So we're going to start wrapping up our conversation. This has been great, but...
Already?
I know.
I feel like I barely scratched the surface.
I know. I think maybe we need to have you back and get into some of these things, even just one of these topics or one of these questions even deeper and deeper, because there's so much. And the reality is, even if we do this thing like 3 months from now, the entire landscape in AI will have changed and all of the context will be different. All right. So we talked about AI literacy and you needing to kind of use before you can get to that later level to evaluate. So what's a quick and easy activity that an educator who's sort of not certain or not comfortable with AI to do they've never used an AI chatbot or any AI in a generative way. What's a quick and easy activity for them to do to kind of get their feet wet and start to understand?
Great question. I would say open up ChatGPT or Claude or any generative AI chatbot, Copilot, Gemini, and take a standard or standards. It can be standards that you need to teach in the next couple of weeks. Copy that standard or standards, put it in. So we'll just use ChatGPT as the example and give it some context. So you have to train the AI a bit. Tell it what you teach, what content do you teach, what age level do you teach. You can even give it details of where you teach. You can give details about your school. You teach at a Title I school. You teach at a school with a lower socioeconomic status, et cetera. You have a lot of multilingual learners in your class, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you have any things that, like if you're a UDL teacher or maybe your school is a PBL school, give it all that information and then tell it the length of the lesson plan. I have 2 days to teach this lesson, or maybe I only have one 50-minute period to teach this lesson, and have it generate a lesson plan for you. That's exactly what I have teachers do that have just never experimented with it before. The key though is give it your standards. This is a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, that if you are using an AI that doesn't understand your standards or you're not giving it your standards and training it on your standards, to me, it's of little use to you as a teacher, because that's your whole purpose as a teacher, right? Is to meet those standards. So the AI has to understand those.
Thank you.
I feel like Alex is pushing this along. We're both disappointed that we're wrapping this up because you've said I've been right more than once here and you can't really take it. But we're going for the hat trick here.
I live for patting your back.
As long as you promise to do that, we'll have you right back on. So the last question that we ask all of our visitors that come to our little virtual world here is, tell us a bit about a favorite teacher or most impactful teacher in your life.
If I had to pick one teacher specifically, that was one of my teachers, I would say Jennifer Peabody was my family and consumer sciences teacher. And she's the one that actually I would never have been a teacher and gone into education if it wasn't for her. So I have to call her out.
That's great. So what about her teaching kind of made you want to be a teacher?
Good question. I think the subject matter being applicable and relevant to real life.
A little full circle moment in your life.
Yep. And again, I think I kind of sort of hit on this earlier in the podcast I think I used the word engagement, that we're going to have an engagement issue in education when your kids all have a personal little AI companion that knows everything about them and how they learn best, etc. And yes, it will be an engagement issue, but it'll be an engagement issue because of a lack of relevance. When they have an AI companion, I've heard all sorts of terminologies. I'm just using the word companion, whatever you want to call it, AI assistant, AI avatar, that can explain a concept to them in seconds, exactly the way that they learn best. You're going to have a relevance issue as a teacher, focusing on you as the teacher versus that AI that can so target them so personally that we want to do as a teacher, but our brains work a lot slower than AI, is the moral of the story. So relevance is my end.
Look at that, Bob. She took our teacher question and brought it right back to the topic, did her own conclusion and wrap up. Lindy, you can go ahead and just do this podcast all by yourself next time. And we'll have you back. Bob and I will just say, it's Lindy, and then you just do the podcast. So, Lindy, this was great. Thanks so much for joining us today and sharing all your insights and giving us some real relevant, specific, engaging examples. See what I just did there, Bob? See, I kind of a little full circle myself there.
You copied her. Excellent work, Alex.
See, I don't even need AI to get my work done for me by other people. But Lindy, this is great. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And really, I feel like we really just started to scrape the surface. I could talk for another 3 hours on the topic of AI and education.
I can talk for 3 hours on anything. All right. Thanks so much. All right, Bob. That was a fun episode. I've known Lindy for a long time, so I always love listening to her. But what are your thoughts?
I love listening to her tell me that I'm right. So big fan.
Of course you do. Because it's so rare. I mean, I would imagine that's quite an exciting thing for you.
I don't even know how to respond, Alex. The beatdowns that you're used to taking from me in our little games, they've apparently done permanent damage. So if I could get on to the important stuff here now, Alex.
Yes, please.
So we've done a few AI episodes now, and they've been, I guess for us, highly regarded. They've been sought out as a topic that is a hot topic for teachers and other educators. I think that we'll get those people again who are out looking to learn what they can do with AI, trying to be at the forefront. I think they're going to find this. This message is to those people. Go find the teachers down the hall who are afraid of AI. Go find those teachers who want to know how to detect it rather than how to teach with it, and give them this podcast. I know it's self-serving for us, but she's got the answers for you.
That's right. Make sure when you're doing that they listen all the way to the end, because I think that those tips that she gives at the end to really help you get started, that's going to be the difference between at the end of the year being on the bus versus being under the bus as to what this whole AI thing is going to do. Now, I think that's great advice. Well, another one in the can and out the door for our listeners today. So, Bob, thanks for doing another one of these with me.
Learning Through Technology, a K-12 edtech podcast, is brought to you by STS Education, a Pacific OneSource company. To learn more about how educators can leverage technology to drive successful educational outcomes, check us out at www.stsed.com. Connect with us by searching for Learning Through Technology in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, or anywhere else podcasts are found. And click subscribe so you don't miss an episode. On behalf of the team at STS Education, thanks for joining us.